It was a calm night at the Terran Deep Space Listening Station, the kind of night where the hum of the equipment was the loudest sound in the room. Lieutenant Mark Rivera sat at his post, sipping a cup of lukewarm coffee, eyes fixed on the endless streams of data running across his screen. Most nights were quiet like this. They picked up random space noise, signals from old satellites, distant pulsars, or static from cosmic radiation. Nothing exciting ever happened here, but then something strange happened. A sudden signal cut through the static. It wasn't like the usual pings or noise. This was steady, strong, and deliberate. Mark frowned, adjusting the receiver. The sound was unlike anything he'd heard before, almost like a voice, but speaking in a language that didn't belong to Earth. He was about to mark it as unidentified when something unbelievable occurred. He understood it, not word for word in any known language, but the meaning flowed into his mind as if the speaker was talking directly to him. His eyes widened as he heard the words in perfect clarity. To all forces in the Orion conflict, keep humans out of this war, for your own survival. Mark sat frozen, unsure if he had imagined it. His coffee grew cold in his hand as the voice repeated the message exactly the same way. Then it ended, leaving only the soft background hiss of space. He immediately saved the recording and called for the station commander. Within minutes, the room was full of people. Technicians checked the signal's authenticity, engineers scanned for interference, and the commander demanded answers. The results came back quickly. The message was real, and the signal source was pinpointed to a star system over 500 light-years away, deep inside a region known as the Orion Conflict Zone. This was a war-torn area where two powerful alien coalitions had been fighting for decades. What made no sense was that no human ship had ever been anywhere near that system. The United Earth government had strict rules about staying out of alien wars. Humans were still newcomers to the galaxy, and Earth's leaders wanted to avoid becoming targets. So why would a warning like this be sent, and more importantly, why? Was it directed at humans? The commander ordered the message sent immediately to Earth's Central Command. Still, curiosity spread through the listening station like wildfire. Some whispered that it was a threat, that the aliens were telling humanity to stay out or face destruction. Others thought it might be a trick to scare Earth into hiding. Mark, however, felt something different. The tone of the voice had an urgency in it, but not hatred. It was the kind of tone someone uses when they are trying to save you from danger, not scare you. It puzzled him even more. By the end of the shift, the strange broadcast had been forwarded to multiple departments, and the listening station was ordered to monitor that frequency around the clock. They didn't have to wait long. The same message returned, word for word, on the next night. This time it came from a slightly different point in space, like someone was broadcasting it from different ships or relay stations. Soon, reports arrived from other listening posts across the human colonies. They, too, had intercepted the same message. It was always the same voice, the same warning, and the same mysterious clarity that allowed every listener to understand it instantly, no matter what language they spoke. The news eventually reached the general public. Media outlets buzzed with speculation. Talk shows invited scientists and military officials to give their opinions. Everyone wanted to know, what was it about humans that made a war-torn part of the galaxy so desperate to keep them away? At the Bay United Earth Government headquarters, leaders gathered in emergency meetings. They debated for hours, arguing over how to respond. Some wanted to send a diplomatic team to the Orion sector to demand an explanation. Others thought it was best to ignore the message and focus on protecting Earth's borders. Meanwhile, Mark couldn't stop thinking about it. He had listened to the recording dozens of times, searching for hidden meaning. It almost felt as if the speaker knew humans very well, too well. How could a civilization hundreds of light years away know anything about Earth? Humanity had only been traveling in space for a short time, compared to the age of the galaxy. And yet, this voice spoke as if they already understood exactly what humans were capable of. One night, as he sat alone in the station's dim control room, Mark replayed the signal again. He noticed something subtle. Between the main words, there was a faint undertone, like another layer of sound. It wasn't random noise. It was deliberate, as though the message carried a hidden code. He made a note to analyze it later. The next morning, the station received a classified message from the United Earth government. All recordings of the broadcast were to be locked away, and discussion of the signal with civilians was strictly forbidden. Mark felt uneasy about this. If the message was truly meant to protect humans, why hide it from the people? But rules were rules, and for now, he had to follow orders. Still, something deep inside him refused to let go of the mystery. He couldn't stop asking himself the same questions. Why the warning? Why humans? And what kind of danger could possibly make an entire war zone agree to keep one species out? Somewhere far away in the dark corners of the Orion conflict, someone or something was watching humanity, and they clearly believed that if humans stepped into that war, the entire galaxy would pay the price. The strange message had now traveled far beyond the listening stations and command rooms. It had reached the heart of human politics, the news channels, and the minds of billions of people across Earth and its colonies. Everywhere, people were talking about it, in coffee shops on Mars, in crowded markets on Luna, and even in the dusty mining stations on the asteroid belt. The United Earth government tried to control the narrative, but the words were already out. Keep humans out of this war, for your own survival. It was too strange and too direct to ignore. The message had a kind of weight to it, the kind that made people lean in and lower their voices when they spoke about it. In government offices, the debate was fierce. Some leaders said the warning should be taken seriously. Humanity was still small compared to the vast and ancient civilizations in the galaxy. Getting involved in a large-scale alien war could lead to disaster. They believed. Staying neutral was the safest path. Others thought differently. They saw the warning as an opportunity. If the galaxy was afraid of humans, maybe that fear could be used as a bargaining tool. Perhaps humans could demand recognition, territory, or technology in exchange for staying out of the conflict. For them, the message was a sign of power, not weakness. Far from the political halls, Dr. Alara Voss was quietly working in her office at the Xenolinguistics Institute in Geneva. She was one of the few people with permission to study the original recording of the alien transmission. Alara had spent her life studying alien languages, and she knew how to detect the smallest changes in tone, pitch, and emotional weight. When she listened to the message, she noticed something unusual. It wasn't just the words, it was the feeling in them. There was urgency, but not aggression. Fear, but not hatred. The speaker's voice carried the same kind of tone someone might use to stop a friend from walking into a dangerous situation. This wasn't an enemy trying to scare humanity into staying away. It felt more like a desperate attempt to prevent a disaster. Her analysis brought her to a strange conclusion. The message wasn't simply aimed at humans. It was also aimed at everyone else in the Orion conflict. The warning was telling them to keep humans out. That meant both sides in the war had some agreement, unspoken or not, that humans should be left alone. That in itself was rare. In wars this large, there were no safe species, no special exceptions. So why humans? While Ilara worked, Mark Rivera was busy on his own. Ever since the first night he heard the message, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. He had spent hours analyzing the faint undertones in the recording, the strange layer of sound hidden beneath the main voice. It was difficult to separate, but he had finally managed to isolate a pattern. It wasn't language in the traditional sense, but it was communication, repeating tones that seemed to act as coordinates. If his guess was right, the signal wasn't just a warning, it was also pointing toward a specific location within the Orion conflict zone. Mark didn't tell his superiors. Something told him they would lock the information away. Instead, he decided to reach out to someone who might know more. Through an encrypted channel, he contacted an old acquaintance, a merchant named Koresh, a reptilian alien who had dealt with humans for years. Koresh was known for traveling through dangerous war zones, always bringing back news and rare goods. When Mark mentioned the warning, Koresh's voice went cold. "I've heard it," Koresh said quietly, "and I know why it was sent." Mark leaned closer to his console. "Then tell me." But Koresh hesitated. "Humans do not know their own history, not all of it. There was a time, long before your recorded years, when humans walked among the stars. They fought in a war far greater than this one. And they changed things." "Changed what?" Mark asked. Koresh sighed. "The way wars were fought. The way enemies thought. The way the galaxy saw survival itself. You were not the strongest or the most advanced, but you were impossible to stop. That is why the warning exists. No one wants those days to return." The call ended before Mark could ask more. He sat there in silence, his mind racing. Could it be true? Could humanity have once been part of some ancient war? If so, why didn't anyone on Earth know about it? Meanwhile, on the far edge of the galaxy, the Orion conflict continued. Reports came in of massive battles between the two alien coalitions, ships lost by the hundreds, and entire planets reduced to smoldering ruins. Yet in all this chaos, both sides seemed to be actively avoiding human-controlled space. Even when their ships passed close to human trade routes, they veered away. This behavior was too consistent to be coincidence. Someone, or perhaps many, were making sure humans stayed untouched. Back on Earth, Ilara Voss presented her findings to a small group of government officials. She explained the emotional weight in the message and her belief that it was not an act of intimidation, but of caution. "What exactly are they afraid of?" one official asked. Ilara looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Not what we might do to them. What we might do to everyone, including ourselves. If we join this war." Her words hung in the room like heavy smoke. Some of the officials dismissed her theory. Others listened more closely than they cared to admit. As days passed, the broadcasts kept coming. Always the same, always from different points in space, as if to make sure the message reached everyone. And with each day, the tension on Earth grew. Citizens began protesting, some demanding to stay out of the Orion War entirely, others calling for action to find out the truth. Mark and Ilara had never met, but fate was pushing them toward the same mystery. They didn't know it yet, but soon their paths would cross. And when they did, the questions that haunted them both would demand answers, answers the galaxy might not want humanity to hear. Mark had not been able to stop thinking about Koresh's words. They echoed in his mind even when he tried to focus on his work. You were impossible to stop. The idea that humans might have fought in an ancient war, long before recorded history, seemed impossible. Earth's history books made no mention of such a thing. According to everything Mark had learned, humanity's first steps into deep space had happened less than 3 centuries ago. But Koresh had spoken with certainty, as if he had seen the proof with his own eyes. Mark needed answers. It wasn't easy to contact Koresh again. The alien merchant traveled through dangerous war zones and rarely stayed in one place. Mark sent encrypted messages through trade channels, hoping one would reach him. Finally, a week later, a reply came through. Koresh agreed to meet, under strict conditions. The meeting would take place on a neutral trade hub known as Station Hollow, far from Earth, but still outside the Orion conflict zone. Mark booked passage on a civilian cargo ship, officially taking personal leave. In truth, he knew this trip could cost him his career if the United Earth government discovered it. Station Hollow was a massive, ring-shaped structure orbiting a cold, lifeless moon. It was a place where merchants, smugglers, and wanderers crossed paths. The air smelled faintly of machine oil and exotic spices from alien markets. Mark found Koresh in a quiet corner of a tea house, his reptilian eyes scanning the crowd. "You came," Koresh said in a low, raspy voice. "I need to know the truth," Mark replied. "About the warning, about humans." Koresh hesitated, his scaled fingers tapping the table. "The galaxy remembers things humans have forgotten. Long ago, before your world's written history, your kind was not bound to one planet. You traveled among the stars, not as explorers, but as survivors of another war." Mark frowned. "What war?" Koresh's eyes darkened. "The Black Sky Years. That is what the galaxy calls it. It was a time when entire star systems burned. Many species fought, but none fought like humans. You were not the most advanced. Your weapons were simple compared to others. But your will was unbreakable. You adapted faster than anyone had seen before. You learned your enemies' tactics. Within days, you turned their strengths against them, and you never stopped, no matter how many fell." Mark felt a chill run through him. If that's true, why don't we remember any of it? Because when it ended, the galaxy decided you must forget, Koresh said quietly. They erased you from their records and kept you isolated. It was not done out of hatred. It was done out of fear of what might happen if you returned to the battlefield. Mark leaned back, struggling to take it in. "And the Orion War? Why send the warning now?" Koresh's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because the war is spreading. If humans join it, by choice or by accident, the balance will break. Both sides know it. That is why even enemies agree to keep you out." Before Mark could ask more, Koresh's gaze flicked toward the doorway. "We have company," he murmured. A group of armored figures had entered the tea house, their movements too controlled to be casual. Without another word, Koresh slipped Mark a small data crystal. "This will tell you more. Now go, and be careful who you trust." Mark left quickly, blending into the crowd. His heart pounded as he made his way back to his ship. Back on Earth, Dr. Ilara Voss was having her own encounter with the truth. She had been granted access to fragments of ancient alien archives, records so old that most were little more than damaged holograms. But in one file, she found something startling, a crude image of a soldier in armor that was unmistakably human. The file was tagged with alien script she recognized as belonging to a long-extinct species. The translation chilled her. "The species that learns too quickly. Keep them contained." She stared at the image for a long time. The armor was different from anything in Earth's museums. It was made for survival, not ceremony. The human in the image carried a weapon that looked primitive compared to alien designs, but the expression on his face, fierce, determined, was what caught her attention. She felt a strange connection to that nameless figure, as if he were silently warning her too. Ilara began to wonder if the recent warning wasn't just about protecting humans from the Orion War. It might also be about protecting the galaxy from humans. Meanwhile, the Orion conflict raged on. Reports came in of entire planets being evacuated, fleets clashing in deep space, and strange disappearances of smaller ships near the war zone's edge. But in all of this chaos, one fact stood. No human ship had been attacked. Even when accidents brought human vessels close to battle lines, alien ships turned away or retreated. It was as if an unspoken rule was being followed. A rule older than the war itself. Mark arrived back on Earth 2 weeks after leaving. In the privacy of his apartment, he loaded Koresh's data crystal into a secure console. What he saw took his breath away. There were old star maps showing human movements across the galaxy, movements from thousands of years ago. There were battle records describing human strategies, reports of enemy fleets destroyed not by superior weapons, but by clever traps and relentless assaults. The final file was the most shocking, a treaty signed by over 20 alien civilizations. The text was simple and clear. By agreement, humanity shall remain within the Sol system. No invitation to war shall be extended, no provocation given. Should they leave, consequences shall be beyond control. Mark sat in silence long after. The files ended. The pieces were starting to fit together, but the picture they formed was dangerous. If this knowledge became public, it could change how humans saw themselves and how the galaxy saw them. Somewhere far away, the Orion War was creeping closer to human space. And Mark had the growing feeling that the warning broadcasts wouldn't be enough to keep humanity out for much longer. Back on Earth, the warning from the galaxy was no longer a strange curiosity. It had become a political storm. Every news channel ran stories about it. Some showed images of alien war zones, warning that humans should stay far away. Others invited military experts who argued that humanity should prepare to join the fight, not hide from it. In the Grand Chamber of the United Earth Council, the atmosphere was tense. Delegates from every human colony, Mars, Luna, Titan, and the orbital stations, had gathered. Holographic maps of the Orion conflict glowed in the air, red lines marking battlefronts that shifted almost daily. Every few hours, new reports arrived of planets falling or fleets vanishing in deep space. A representative from the Martian colony spoke first. We cannot ignore the fact that two powerful alien forces have told us to stay away. This could be an opportunity to avoid unnecessary loss of life. Our focus should be on protecting human territory, not expanding it. Almost immediately, a voice from the Titan delegation rose in disagreement. Opportunity? No, this is fear. They are afraid of us. If the galaxy fears human strength, then we should use that fear to secure a better place for ourselves among the stars. If we stay quiet forever, we'll always be the galaxy's afterthought. The room erupted into overlapping arguments. Some shouted about caution, others about ambition. The debate seemed endless. Outside those political walls, Dr. Elara Voss sat in her office, quietly studying the data she had collected. She had finally confirmed that the hidden undertones in the alien message were indeed coordinates. They pointed to a system at the very edge of the Orion War Zone. She suspected this location held the reason for the warning, perhaps even evidence of humanity's forgotten past. But the government had classified all information about the broadcasts, and she knew gaining permission to travel there would be impossible. She wasn't the only one making discoveries. Mark Rivera, still working his shifts at the listening station, had pieced together more details from the files Koresh had given him. The ancient treaty, the star maps, the battle records, they all pointed to the same truth. The galaxy had gone to great lengths to keep humans isolated for centuries. What troubled Mark most was a set of files describing containment actions. These were missions carried out by alien fleets to destroy human-built probes or prevent human ships from venturing too far into space. It was all done quietly, in ways that made it look like natural accidents or malfunctions. Mark's instincts told him that the current warning was part of the same long-standing effort, but now it was more desperate. Something in the Orion War was making the alien powers nervous enough to speak directly to humans, rather than just keeping them contained from a distance. As days passed, the broadcasts became more frequent. Sometimes the voice came from deep within the Orion War, other times from systems much closer to human space. A pattern began to emerge, one that both Mark and Alara noticed separately. The broadcasts were moving closer, as if the war itself was slowly creeping toward human borders. Then came the incident that changed everything. A small human cargo convoy, traveling between Luna and the frontier colony of Ceres Prime, reported being intercepted by an alien fleet. At first, the fleet's presence caused panic. Many feared this was the start of an attack. But instead of firing, the alien ships simply surrounded the convoy, scanned every vessel, and then left without saying a word. The story spread quickly. People began to ask, if the aliens didn't want to harm humans, why intercept the ships at all? Was it a warning, or a reminder that humans were being watched? Inside the United Earth Council, the pressure to make a decision grew unbearable. Should humanity stay out of the Orion War completely, as the warning urged? Or should they seize the chance to prove themselves on the galactic stage? Mark was summoned to a private meeting by someone he didn't expect, Dr. Alara Voss. She had learned about him through contacts in the listening station network and suspected he knew more than he was allowed to share. When they met in a quiet observatory on the edge of the capital city, they exchanged everything they knew. Mark told her about Koresh, the ancient treaty, and the files showing humanity's erased history. Alara shared her findings about the coordinates hidden in the broadcasts. "This location," she said, pointing to a holographic map, "is important. I think the reason for the warning is there." Mark studied the map. The coordinates were dangerously close to the active war zone. Reaching them would require slipping past patrols from both sides of the Orion War. But deep down, he knew she was right. Answers wouldn't come from debates in council chambers. They were out there, somewhere in the stars. Before they could plan further, an urgent news alert flashed on the observatory's wall screen. A massive battle in the Orion War had spilled into neutral space, only 2 systems away from the outer edges of human-controlled territory. For the first time, alien ships had been detected on a direct path toward Seoul. The council scrambled into emergency session. Some argued that this was the perfect moment to show strength, to join the fight before alien fleets entered human space. Others insisted this was exactly the kind of situation the warning had been trying to prevent. The vote was delayed, but the atmosphere was shifting. Fear was giving way to anger. The more the war crept closer, the more people began to question whether hiding was truly an option. Mark and Alara watched the broadcasts continue, each one carrying that same haunting phrase, "Keep humans out of this war. For your own survival." Neither of them could shake the feeling that the meaning of those words was deeper than anyone realized, and that soon humanity might have no choice but to find out the truth for themselves. The warning had hung over humanity like a shadow for months now. Everywhere, people talked about it. Scientists, soldiers, politicians, and ordinary citizens alike. The question was no longer if humanity would enter the Orion War, but when. Then, without warning, it happened. A massive fleet from one side of the Orion conflict crossed the boundary of human space. They were heading toward a small mining colony on the edge of the Sol system, one that had little defense and was poorly prepared for any kind of attack. The colony sent a distress signal, and the United Earth Defense Force scrambled its ships to protect it. Mark Rivera was at the command center, watching the situation unfold. The alien fleet was larger and more advanced than anything humans had faced before. It seemed impossible that Earth's defenses could stop them. But what happened next shocked everyone. Instead of waiting or negotiating, the humans attacked immediately and with fierce precision. The defenders moved like a well-oiled machine, hitting enemy ships at their weakest points. They didn't have the most advanced weapons, but their tactics were brilliant, using speed, surprise, and the element of unpredictability to gain the upper hand. The alien fleet was caught off guard. Their ships, powerful but slower to adapt, struggled to respond to the rapid strikes. Within hours, the invaders were retreating, leaving behind damaged vessels and scattered debris. As news of the victory spread, the galaxy took notice. Messages flooded in from distant systems, some congratulating humanity, others warning them to be careful. But most were filled with fear. The aliens involved in the Orion conflict suddenly remembered the warnings from long ago. They had feared this moment, the return of the humans. At the United Earth Council, the mood was electric. Many representatives were proud, seeing the victory as proof that humanity had earned its place among the stars. Others were more cautious, worried that the battle would only bring more enemies. Mark and Alara watched it all unfold. The mystery of the warning had turned into a reality they could no longer ignore. Humans were no longer outsiders looking in. They were players in a dangerous and ancient game. Still, the question remained, what would humanity do next? Some leaders pushed for peace talks, hoping to use the victory as leverage to stop the war, before it reached Earth again. Others wanted to take the fight to the Orion conflict, believing that staying on the sidelines was no longer an option. In the middle of it all, Mark and Alara met once more, this time in a quiet garden overlooking the city. The stars were bright above them, a reminder of how vast and unknown the galaxy still was. "We changed everything," Mark said quietly. "The warning was clear, but we couldn't stay out forever." Alara nodded. "The galaxy fears us, not just because of our strength, but because of what we represent. We fight differently. We don't give up." Mark looked up at the stars. "Do you think they were right? Was the warning a kindness or a threat?" Alara smiled sadly. "Maybe both. But now it's up to us to decide who we want to be. Survivors or conquerors, peacemakers or warriors." The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity had stepped onto a larger stage, one filled with danger, hope, and endless possibility. And whatever came next, the galaxy would never forget the day humans answered the warning and changed the course of the war forever.